Yep, we're on live stream, so welcome everyone to the meeting for infrastructure and projects for the 1st of July, not the 4th of July. So we do have a quorum. We do have a couple of apologies. Mayor Clark is not able to be with us today, and Parnia's apology for lateness. She may be joining us on Zoom at some point, so can I have someone move in second? Thanks, Steve. Thanks. Darren, all those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Declarations of interest in relation to our agenda today, anyone? Don't have any public forum. Major late item around the solid waste stations, so I need to move that acceptance data. Could I have someone move? Leslie second. Barry, that we accept that. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Okay, so item 4 on our agenda, WasteNet meeting on the 4th of April 2025. Is the discussion around those meeting minutes or points that we make? No? You're happy to move, Barry? Seconder, please. Thanks. Rangi, all those?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Minutes of the infrastructure meeting for the 3rd of June 2025, 2 p.m, the one we held out at in Southland.
Move that way.
Thank you. Any second, thanks Tom. Any discussion on those minutes before we put them? Those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Okay, tab 6, which is 7 on the agenda, land disposal at on Bluff Highway. So Russell and Heather, welcome.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. This report, I'll just presume it's taken as read, but I guess we purchased the land predominantly so that we could actually create work with NZTA to create the new access to Lake Street, which is all but complete. And these lots that we've got are the residual pieces from that purchase. We see no strategic purpose for the land, one of which we have required as part of the resource consent to have as a wetland, which has an ongoing cost, and we're just looking for some direction as how to dispose of those pieces of land. So happy to take some questions.
And noting the preferred option the preferred option is that negotiate and sell to HLWR who have property interest out.
That's correct.
Discussion on this paper?
Move the recommendation. I support the recommendation made by Council, and I'll move that.
I'll take Barry a second, but Steve, you had a question just before.
Oh yeah, it was just, thanks, Chair. It was just around the wetland, just for clarification. So who establishes the guidelines of how that wetland is to be managed, and do we have any idea around how the organisation intends to manage to those guidelines, I guess?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. The resource consent sets out the requirements for a management plan for the wetlands and how you must maintain it over that period of time. So the owner, any future owner, whether it be council or others, will need to work inside that resource consent. So.
Okay.
Goes with the title in effect, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Any final? Got a mover and seconder. All those in favour of option? Just let me get that right. So option, the recommendation is authorises the disposal of land by way of sale and authorises the Chief Executive to directly negotiate the sale of the residual land parcels to HWR Property Group.
Aye.
Next item is capital portfolio update for the museum. So table for this, please. Hey, welcome, guys. So do you just want to sort of highlight any sort of particular areas you want us to focus on in the paper?
Good afternoon, everyone, and through you, Mr. Chair. So we'll take the report as read. The key items within the report are what came out of discussion in the finance assurance meeting. So the topics covered in here around the key dates, key previous dates, current risks and current mitigating factors. I think I just want to draw to the attention of councillors around the page, it hasn't got a page number on. The current program's risk page 29.
29 of board books or 4 or 7 of the report. Yep. Yep.
It's below the coloured chart.
29.
So it's page 29 of board books, yeah.
So we've done a review of all the key areas, current program risks. As you can see from the chart, we're reasonably confident around where the current build and base build are tracking. However, there's obviously still key risks around the fit out of the experiences and the fit out of the education and central foyer areas. And the final part of that is obviously the engagement of staff and testing and commissioning of the entire facility. So we've listed a few of the current program risks underneath that and some mitigating opportunities. Not that we were looking for those to be a decision making, but more just to highlight some of the areas that we could look at. On current program and the work that NAILers are doing, I don't see that there's a huge amount of space there for accelerating NAILers. They're tracking pretty well to where they need to get to for next year. And we really need to focus now on those fit out areas. Do you have anything to add, Jamie?
Nothing to add to that. No, questions would be welcome.
So the report highlights maybe the critical issues that need to be resolved before we can commit to a 2026 opening. Could you just reassure me, if you can, that that we are working to mitigate those with a determination that it will be that we can have an opening, even if it's not everything open, that we can have the building open and that some of the displays at least open by Christmas 26? Is it a determination around that is really my question.
I guess if I can talk through you, Mr. Chair, we're actively working pretty rapidly through all those key areas that are at risk. As of today, there's still quite a few moving parts to that. I think it would be remiss of us to commit to a timeline until we're really confident that we've got those areas well known and acknowledged and a plan around them.
You can commit to a determination. You can commit to a determination to find a way through it. Get 18 months to go.
I think, as we've highlighted in the report, that there's a couple of facets to this project. One is the physical build. The second part is putting everything back into it. That is the more complex piece than it is in the build. And that's really where we're highlighting, as of today, that we've got quite a bit of work to do to make sure that we can get that pointed in the right direction. Again, Jamie, you want to talk to this?
Through you, Chair, it's not a stretch to say that we're committed. Absolutely not a stretch at all. The work that if we're to drive towards a date, the work is not complete yet, quite simply. So I would be inappropriate for us as leaders of those teams to sort of suggest that there was an assumption that we could hit something if we haven't done the work that contributes to understanding what that something is.
So just on that, when will you be in a position to be able to come back to this committee to determine that?
I think we call out there in the end of the report there that one of the biggest issues we have risks still outstanding is in sort of staffing up and getting the operational staff ready to turn that completed building into a functioning service. It's no short task and no easy task, and we've got to get the people on board at the moment, so there's plenty of variables there at the moment. I would say we really need to have a robust plan in place that's within 3 to 6 months to come back here and ensure that we can be confident about that.
So just to clarify, so you'd come back to the committee within 3 to 6 months?
With the plan.
Rangi.
Thanks, Chair. I guess I can't resist this and open with the fact that this must be an extremely risk-averse project because of the $5.5 million consultant cost it's wearing. So get that in early. Look, it's good to tick the boxes with these timelines and everything, but the questions I'm getting constantly as a councillor, when will it be fully open to the public? Tom's already mentioned this, but it states in your timeline here, cultural facility opens to the public 2027. Now, 2027's got 365 days in it. Now, is it, like you could be January or you could be December? I mean, that's what people want to know. The other question they're asking is, what will be the operational cost? I mean, obviously, you've just stated that getting staff and everything, you really haven't got an idea, have you? Because you don't, obviously, the staff layout and what time you're going to open. The other thing is on people's mind now, and it's, I hate to say it, but will it breach the $100 million price tag? Do we have the control? Because it's a long way away, 2027, and is everything locked? Can we be guaranteed that this is it? There's no more, like a year ago, the project came back to council saying, oh, we forgot to price the experience. So there was another 14 million added last year in July, okay? So and that is fact, because we went out to consult on it. So I'm just asking the question, are we locked in now? This is it, no more?
Through you, Chair. I have been constantly reminded by my boss and also Grant in every discussion I think we've ever had that there is no additional budget coming our way or anything like that. So at this point in time, we're working within our budget and we're contracting our major pieces of work within that budget. Those contracts have not been signed off as yet, so we didn't want to be doing anything contract-wise with regards to taking this to public excluded or anything like that, so that wasn't really a topic I wanted to touch on. However, I can assure you that we're currently tracking within budget. The work around operational cost, it goes on. It is a very different proposition from the previous SMAG operation, so it will be different and something that needs to be brought back and clarified. But the work has commenced in that space to understand what that operational cost is, but it's not something that directly sits, it sits more in the operations space rather than with the program of work that we've undertaken, but we do have an understanding. The same group of people is working on it, so we do have an understanding of what that's shaping up like.
I guess the key reasoning behind that question is the first thing you do when you go to a car sales and you're going to buy a car is you ask, what miles to the gallon do I get out of it? And if he tells you 2 miles to the gallon, you don't buy it. That's what I mean. If we've got a building that's going to take a lot to run, a setup or an experience, that's, wouldn't that have been sort of factored in right at the start, because...
I can jump in here and I'll probably come to you, Rex or Michael. So in the long-term plan, Ringy, there is, I think it's $3 million, it's $4 million that's flagged for operational costs. So that has been bookmarked in the operational and the long-term plan, so that's there. So there's not no budget. There is a budget. Right. I think your question though is fair around we need confidence that it can be delivered within that budget, and I think that's the point of your questioning. Is that fair?
Yeah. No, it's always good to ask at an early state.
Yeah. No, thank you. Who have I got next? Trish.
Thank you, Chair. So just with regard to the mitigating opportunities, I also have had lots of conversations with people about the museum, and many people want it done and done right. Yeah. And so when I look at number 2, where it says museum opened in 2 stages, the main story open to the public along with all other elements other than the temporary galleries to be completed. I understand that that would be a possibility because we don't need to have those extra galleries open. But that would be the only thing. Otherwise, the museum would be, I would encourage us to have it as is so that it's running operationally the way it's going to be. Because that's what people, look, we've waited for this for some time. We've put a lot of thought and effort into it. And when it's open, it's going to be magnificent. But we do not, I don't believe, in conversations I've had with people, we don't want it to be a part of this and then a bit more and then a bit more. So I just wanted to clarify, please, that mitigating opportunities was only to do with those extra display paces at the back.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that's correct. The key focus would be on having the key operational areas open. The focus over the last period has definitely been on the story of Southton in that space. There's still a lot of planning work to actually be done in those 2 guest areas as well. It's not just a matter of putting some artefacts on a box.
Oh, I realise that.
There's quite a lot involved in also fitting out those spaces as well. It's
important for us as a community to see what it is when it opens, not as it might be. That's in my opinion, and what conversations I've had with people.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yep. I just wanted to support what Jamie had said in regards to the potential for, I guess, costs. If we look at the proportion of project as it sits, a lot of it has already been submitted and committed in what Nailers are building. That's a fairly large proportion of costs that's now locked away. We're talking about a smaller value or proportion of the project is still to be completed. We're working through with Nailers the last pieces of their puzzle now, which is some of the PC sums, which relates to the fit out. Current indications are that those are coming in very close. If not, we're working with the team to get those very close to where they need to be. So all indications at the moment is we're tracking to where the budget had been set.
Thanks, Nick, for that information. So I've got Alex, Barry, Leslie, and then Darren. So Alex.
Just quickly, the resolutions that we have today to receive the report and note the paper. And you've got in there the mitigating opportunities. Who is that plan that you mentioned that you'll bring back within 2 to 3 months? Is that where you'll make the decisions or recommendations on what mitigating opportunities will or recommend to be in place, or is that something for this council to decide that is coming back, or is that something that you will decide?
Through you, Mr. Chair, in relation to some of those mitigating facts, they would be key decisions from a council point of view to make, rather than staff making those sort of decisions. When we talked about the 3 to 6 months, that would give us confidence to then get to that point in time and look at setting an opening date as well, not just a plan. So that plan would also include operating at an open day.
We had a visit to the museum site not so long ago, and the contractors seem pretty confident they're on schedule. It worries me that the public are asking me, like Rangi said, they're asking us when's the opening date. That's a biggie for them, and I just don't want this project to get price increases that are going to just bump it up to that.
So is there a question there or just a statement? Statement, thank you. Okay, Leslie.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Councillor Boyle and Councillor Crackett have partly asked what I was going to ask, but I'll ask it in a slightly different form. And because you've raised the issue of a possible opening in 2 stages, can you clearly state when you come back in 3 to 6 months, if your proposal is to suggest an opening in 2 stages, it will be very clear at that next report that is your suggestion. Yes, it is up to council to make the decision, but what I would like to know is that is the time frame when you will be able to say, we would recommend an opening in 2 stages, we would recommend one big opening of everything, and if it's an opening in 2 stages, what would not be ready? So would the cafe potentially not be up and running with all the bells and whistles? Would the education space still have some work to be done on it? Can we have an assurance that in 3 to 6 months when you come back, that will all be part of what you're putting on the table?
Through you, Chair, absolutely. I think that that's appropriate to come back with that information.
And we would then, as council, be in a very clear position as to what we would decide on an opening date. Thank you.
Yeah, and just the time frame of when we're going to receive that report back, I think, is a suggestion from Jamie rather than what we require. So I think let's bear that in mind. My expectation would be to get a lot sooner than that. But, you know, that's my expectation. Darren.
Thanks, Chair. During a short period of learning, I sold cars. Never was the first question, what are the miles per gallon? I think it was really unfair for Councillor Pottinger to say that staff came back and said, oh, we forgot to ask what the fit-out cost was going to be. That was absolutely not the case. They told us what the building was going to be and that the rest of it was being worked on. You cannot say that staff said, oh, we forgot. That's just tremendously unfair. There are some spillover tensions from the risk and assurance around the timeline for opening, and I think there are risks in thumping the table and trying to put a magic date on it and get things to happen. The risk is that it goes terribly wrong and we don't meet it. And also the risk of trying to accelerate things is that the cost goes up. I would much rather keep the costs under control because that's the feedback I get from a lot of people, making sure that it doesn't blow out. And that's the feedback that I'm getting from how the project is being managed as well. And I'm much more comfortable with that. We originally were looking at the building deadline as December 2025. I think it pushed out to 26. As project lead, Chair, you'd have been aware of that anyway, with the changes around that. But we've got information coming back in 3 to 6 months, which is going to put us in a much better position. Anything between now and then is purely political. We receive the information. We can't wave a magic wand and make things happen. I saw some very interesting statements in a media form about when things could be done and maybe we could change contractors. Well, the person making that doesn't have the authority to take those actions anyway. So it was, a sexy headline, but factually left quite wanting. I'm reassured that we are making good progress. We have been kept updated with what the potential risks and roadblocks and hiccups are. And if you look at some big projects, let's use the Sky City Convention Centre in Auckland. How many years behind's it? Okay, they had a big fire. But those are the risks that come from running big projects. Way back in museum redevelopment version 1, we looked at doing a 2-stage thing and shifting all the artefacts into one half of the building while we did up the other half. The risk of that is during a construction project, fire is the greatest thing that can happen. And it doesn't matter how much insurance you've got. When you lose historical artefacts, they ain't coming back. So the process that we are going through, and everybody says that we're risk averse at the moment. Well, in this instance, I think that's a really good thing. Let's first of all look after the taonga, and secondly, let's make sure that we keep a lid on the costs. If it's late, fine. If we've kept the costs under control, which comes back to the feedback we've had from people that they cannot afford more, that's the key. Thanks, Chair.
Steve and then Ria.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, Darren, Councillor Ludlow, sorry, spoke really well. I guess I'm just really concerned around a commitment to headlines around a date rather than brilliance. I think back to Titanic, making that same mistake. So for me, on time is when it is ready for our community. And I guess my greater concern is not about a delay of a few months, but about opening a museum that doesn't deliver to the standard that our city respects and has asked for. And when I'm talking to people in the community, that's what I constantly hear is not the time. It is, please honour us, our aspirations, our tamariki, by delivering a museum that honours that weight. So for me, I'd rather swallow my pride around a few months than that experience. I'm not endorsing a delay, but I think it's about perspective to me. I'm not a fan of a staged opening. The lines have been used around this table plenty of times: do it once, do it right. And I guess I'm going to put a question on the end. Does it, because wow has been used plenty of times around this table as well, from the front. So does a stage opening, in your opinion, impact the wow factor?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Has potential to, correct. There's still a lot of complexity in those other travelling exhibits. Those conversations still need to happen around what's even going in those. So I think, all of that needs to be well detailed in what we come back with over the next 3 to 6 months. However, it's not that we're just going to come back in 3 months or 6 months' time and drop something on you. Our intention is that we'll be regularly reporting in regards to how we're progressing on mitigating a lot of these things. It's not that we're going to come back and just have one answer. We need to make sure over the next period of time we give you confidence in where we're heading and what dates we're looking to try to achieve to. As I've said earlier, I'm more than confident on where the build's heading, and that's well on track for completion in September next year. It's all the other elements that are really key. It's not as simple as picking up an artefact. Every artefact has to have a story to it. It has to have it has to be integrated into where it sits. Those elements then need to be heated and controlled and lit. So there's a huge design element. It's not as opening a museum is not as easy as opening a shop, if I put it that way.
Just because facts are really important. So when you talk, Nick, about September finish, that's fit out build as well as build, right?
Through you, Mr. Chair. That's correct. That's where Naylor's contract is through till end of September next year.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm very much in the view of, when it comes to this museum, that the stage opening will have no doubt a factor on our public. I'm not in support of such a staged opening, for the reasons being that we have said, we around this table, that this is the best thing since sliced cheese in terms of the museum. So I do get concerned about one delivering on or under budget in the most financially prudent way possible that we can, would be supported by the public, who have also said that we want to open, and as Steve said, do it once, do it right. To do a two-stage factor, I'm not really convinced that that's what the thought process is, that the public want to attend an opening twice. It almost seems very wrong, and it seems that we haven't planned well, or we've got to do that. I understand the reasons why, the risk there and what those mitigating factors can be, and I'm, like others, would like to see it open, and in a big grand opening, just one. Other things can definitely work around in the background, that's no problem, but to have two-stage openings, I'm concerned about that. And just another little question, if that's okay, Mr. Chair. When we talked about the design build and the concept stage of the museum, we had some people come in and submit about the rose garden behind the museum, and it was determined that the fence along there would have sections only taken out for seating. And being on the site last week, I became aware that the whole fence line's coming down.
No.
So for clarification, could you please help with that? Because on site, it was the whole lot was said it was being taken down.
Through you, Chair. My understanding is that there is a knock-through for the rose garden. It is roughly in line with the gap that was kind of in that north-facing segment of the museum north wall. and there is a entryway, if you like, into the rose garden with some accessible, wheelchair accessible side and a step side to cater for the drop.
Great. So I wanted to clarify that because that's what I understood. But it was mentioned that where we were standing from, that fence would be completely gone, where when those windows are at, which is why I wanted to clarify.
I think they may have been talking about the gap as opposed to the whole fence. But anyway.
That's what I'm seeking
Now you're
clarification.
clarified? Yep.
Yes, thank you.
Cheers. I've got Tom, Michael, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Through yourself, Chair. Just want to highlight something that was mentioned before in relation to that September date. That is the construction build, not the full experience fit-out timeline. That contract is still under negotiation to be finalised in relation to those timings. The indication that we've got in the report is that is indicating around December 26 in relation to that fit-out component at the moment. And the operational side, the two-stage, I just wanted, not trying to weigh in, but it is something that I think we should be aware of. If you're lining up international experiences, we need the 12 months out from that. We need to know when we're going to have that open anyway to lock those timeframes in. That could be why you have an implication in relation to a two-stage, because it may be when you actually have an exhibition that's coming through. If we're actually designing our own exhibition, that would take quite a significant amount of staff time as well. So we've got to weigh that up. And I would highlight a little light on the staffing front in relation to that area. That is something that we have as concern about how do we get that recruitment. We are starting in the very near future, like weeks and months away, in relation to trying to get those key staff on board. The key one I would say in relation to that is trying to get some of those operational staff to take the load off the people that have been looking at the experience so they can really focus in on that, and operational staff can focus in on how do we actually operate the facility. We do not have those staff on board at the moment. So that is a big gap, and recruitment market being as it is, that will be the challenge for the next few months for us. From an operation side to support the museum. We've got to get on and get those going.
So a quick comment, then a question. The issue of whether you open it in one stages or two, I think Michael has actually just articulated what I was going to say. If you look at what's shown as a plan is to open all of the permanent exhibitions first, but then the temporary exhibition, which is the basically visiting exhibitions, might open later, because otherwise you've got to absolutely commit to a visiting exhibition and you might not know exactly the date, so you cannot commit to it. So I think the two stages, when you talk about it in two stages, it's a little bit misleading. It's not a matter of half the building being finished. It's a matter of the permanent exhibitions opening, and then once you know you're absolutely 100% sure when that's going to be the case, then you can book the temporary exhibitions to come through. So I think maybe a little bit misunderstanding around here. The other question I have for two extremely experienced project directors in the room, am I right in thinking, certainly my experience, that nearly all major projects start with a hiss and a roar, and then you get a period of, sometimes called the Valley of Despair, I've seen it drawn that way, where you get a whole heap of problems emerging, once you're part way into the project. And then, the work then is to climb out of that through, planning countermeasures to those. I mean, that's my normal experience, and therefore I would say that this is exactly what I'd expect this project to be at this point. It's gone through the hiss and roar stage. It's in the stage now where problems emerge, and you get then the next stage then is to put in place countermeasures to resolve those, and that's, in my experience, 100% what big projects do. I mean, would you agree with that?
Through you, Chair. I would say that when you say hiss and a roar, if you refer to things like buildings coming out of the ground and a lot of construction activity, you do see that on big construction things. historically for me, LNG facilities, you see massive amounts of work up front, but to turn them into an operational thing where they actually produce a liquid carbon is another thing entirely. So I think what you're alluding to maybe that it looks like there's wheel spinning, but the reality is that there is so many different variables that need to be dealt with. They all require a lot of conversation. So I think a similar level of mahi's going on in the background. It's maybe just not quite as visible on the surface.
Okay, was there anyone else? Okay, so look, thank you, Jamie and Nick, for presenting the paper. I think the direction from the committee is, as soon as practicable, time, cost and functionality. We want to hear back around that, and, it may be a couple of months, but in the interim we'll be getting reporting back around just how we're progressing with some of the risks you've identified here. So thank you very much for bringing it to clarity. Just picking up on your point, Tom, I think, if we just pause and look back for a little minute from what's happened at that site, 18 months ago, or 2 years ago, there was a pyramid there. And now there's a completely new base build that will be finished near Christmas. The trees coming down last week, just amazing the change that had on that site, and people are really getting excited. So I think, to Tom's point, this is the sort of period where is it going to be open? We get a bit frustrated. We've just got to keep focused on how far we've travelled, how close relatively we are to this is a 50-year asset for our community, and if it takes another 6 to 8 months to nail it down and another 12 months to get it open, then it's going to be wonderful for our community. So thank you for your work on this report, and we look forward to the continued updates on it. So I'll just seek a mover and seconder to receive the report.
Happy to move, Mr Chair.
Okay, thanks. And then seconded, Darren. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried.
Thanks.
Okay. Item, or tab 8, item 9, major late item. So the solid waste options. So, Fiona's coming to the table. I think Erin's. Yeah, so just how I'm going to run this session is, this is a really important paper. So what I want to do is get Fiona and Erin to sort of present the paper to us in the way they will, and then I'll take questions on the detail in the paper, and then I want to have a discussion, okay? I don't want to mix the two up. I think it's important that everyone's had the opportunity to ask questions about the paper so that everyone's got the right information before we have the discussion. So if you can just bear that in mind, so questions about the paper, anything you need clarified or not unclear, so you're really entering a debate with your eyes wide open and fully understanding of what decision we're making. So.
Excuse me, Chair, this is just really a point of order or clarification on the actual typo, and rather than start with the wrong information, is that the option 1 cost and the status quo cost are identical. That's not a typo, is it? That's exactly what it is. No, that's great.
341.
Yeah, the questions will come later then. That's fine.
Thank you. No, okay, so Fiona and Erin.
Thank you, Chair. Over the past 6 months, we've been working through a business case process around our solid waste contract delivery. Now, this is in the lead up to our current solid waste contracts, with the exception of the landfill, all expiring in mid-2027. And so, although it seems like we're quite a way away from needing a new contract in mid-2027, solid waste contracts have traditionally always had a long lead time, and particularly now in a post-COVID environment, the requirement for contractors to establish plant, to purchase trucks, etc., all means that we need to have a new contractor appointed with plenty of time for the contractors to hit the ground running come 1 July 2027. So the work that we've done over the past 6 months has really been focused on our requirements to look at Section 17A of the Local Government Act and how we deliver waste services going into any new contract. And that's really around that question of, do we do it alone? Should we do it in-house? Should we partner with other regions, etc.? And then the other piece being around what is the makeup of the services that we should be looking to provide or would like to provide moving forward. And that's where we've explored options around our status quo service provision or potentially options to add on other services that we don't currently have at the moment. And so the purpose of today's paper is to make some decisions around what council would like to go out with their preferred options for public consultation. There will be a whole lot of work for us to do post-public consultation at the end of the year and early into next year around the procurement process, contract negotiations, etc. But the purpose of what the decision that we are seeking from the committee today and then through to recommendations through to council is around those items for public consultation on what services do we want to provide for the community and how do we want to provide those in terms of, you know, do we want to continue with a regional external contract delivery model. I'll get Fiona to take us through the slides, but Rhiannon, would you like to talk through any of the consultation detail?
Yes, so it's just as the standard process as you normally would for a consultation, which options are we going out for with consultation, and then, as Erin said, what's your preferred option. It does note around the process for delegating a hearing panel, and I would just like to make a suggested amendment to the resolutions on that matter. So you'll see that the paper recommends separate hearing panels, and that's still an option, but we would also like to give an alternate option for a joint hearing panel should the other councils align with their processes. That will just mean then that all options are covered. So the first option, the one included within the paper, is that each council considers the matter separately and then reports that through to WasteNet, and then that our hearing panel would be made up of 6 Invercargill City Councillors and or Mana Whenua representatives to be nominated by the council following the election. And I have sent wording for resolutions 10 and 11, so that would be an alternative option for a joint hearing panel where each council would have 2 delegated representatives and an alternate to join together, and then delegating to Erin as the GM of infrastructure to make that decision as appropriate, because it does rely on just simply timing with the other councils having meetings around that logistical process. So. Yes, so that just covers off the consultation process and how we can coordinate as a region to ask those questions that are outlined in the paper.
Just to be clear, Rhiannon, what you're asking is at item 10, which is that joint, you want to add that to the paper? Yeah, okay.
I've sent that through to Liz, so I think they're just going to pop it up on the screen, and I think that would be easier to understand then. Yep. But essentially, it's just really around the timing of meetings, which makes it hard to determine the exact process which is appropriate. Essentially, the process that's included within the paper is that each council would have a separate hearing panel and report that through to WasteNet, and then we're just saying let's plan for an alternative which would be more efficient, which is one joint hearing panel, which would then report to WasteNet and come back to council for decision.
So any questions or Fiona, do you want to run through the paper just in terms of the opinion?
Yes, so a lot of it's information that you have received recently, so I won't reiterate that. I'm sure it's fresh in people's minds. The thing I will draw your attention to is the first 3 slides there, and that just highlights the data that we've got from the recent solid waste assessment, which was completed at the end of last year. So there's a number of pie graphs there, and it demonstrates what goes to the southern landfill under the WasteNet contract. So that's comprised of council services as well as authorised users who fall under the WasteNet contract with AB Lime. The second 2 there provide insight into the volumes from each of the councils, and whether that's through curbside to AB Lime or whether it's via the transfer station and into AB Lime. So just as a bit of a benchmark there, I thought it was worth highlighting our tonnes per capita. So as a region, we are sitting at 564 tonnes per capita for just landfill waste against a New Zealand average of 615. So slightly under, but still at the upper end across the spectrum, with the lowest one being 325 for Waimak Council. So it just gives a bit of a sense of where we're sitting as a region.
Sorry, is that kgs per person?
Yes.
Kilograms
Yes,
per person, yeah.
that's correct. The last pie graph there is included following feedback from our most recent workshop, and that demonstrates what's in our red rubbish bins across the region. So you'll see the very large segment of green, and that's comprised of food and organics waste. So it just provides a little bit of context around what's the driver for the organics diversion that's included in the business case outcomes. And to summarise that pie graph, 65.8% of the materials in red bins are potentially divertible based on the current systems that we've got. So our existing commingled recycling, glass streams, and then if there was an implementation of a food and organics comprising those three items. So that just presents a little bit of context for the rationale for the options being presented and considered here today. The rest has largely been received recently, so I won't reiterate that unless there's any particular questions.
Okay, so just to be clear, so on page 41 of board books, where you've got 58, well, not you, but the graph has got 58.4% of organic. So that's for the total, what goes to landfill from all the councils, that's the percentage that is organic waste. Is that clear?
That's just from red rubbish bins, so...
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Just from red, yeah, so nothing that's delivered down at the transfer station or, yeah, just red rubbish bins, right, okay. Is there any other questions on those pie graphs or the presentation, the appendix one?
Thanks, Chair. What's not mentioned in the wee bit about organics collection, it's my understanding if it went ahead, the organics would be trucked to Dunedin. Is that correct?
We've modelled that in the cost modelling, yes.
So you would send them all the way to Dunedin, all that green waste? Okay.
And so, sorry, I'm happy to just clarify that one. One of the things that we worked through when we were doing the modelling is that there isn't currently an organics facility in Invercargill, and initially the modelling was based on there being a organics facility that either council could establish or that a private enterprise would establish, and that resulted in the costs being somewhat lower than they are at the moment. I was concerned with what would happen if that facility wasn't established, if, for example, council decided that it had different priorities to invest in at the time, and or commercial enterprise didn't see an incentive in doing that at the time. And so that's where we went, what is the nearest established organics facility, which was Dunedin. That came with extra cost, but we asked for that extra cost to be modelled based on that option as essentially a worst case scenario moving forward.
So the reason I ask that is that obviously the business case doesn't mention about the green impact of diesel trucks taking all that green waste, you know, like it's just doesn't seem to sit right, whereas we've talked about before that green waste going to AB Lime and being turned into electricity. Now, none of that is mentioned in here about the pros and cons and all these other things. It's quite clinical, and it doesn't sort of take the social values any further at all. In fact, it doesn't take it anywhere. So I'm just weary, especially us going out to consult. Why? The point of this, is it to narrow down the options for us to consult on, or are we going to approve these all to go out to the public? Because they all have, I'm sure the public would like one of, there's certain people who like green waste and there's some people who won't want it. So basically all the options there make sense. So is the duty of this committee to narrow it down or not?
So I can take that. So that's the direction they're looking for to recommend to council is what do we want to consult on? So do we want to put all the options
right,
up, or do we want to just put two? Or,
okay, so we can consult on everything.
So we will talk through that and we'll come up with a decision. Just further to that point, so with the organics, have you got any breakdown of what that is, i.e. is it majority of the organics that's household food waste?
It's roughly 50-50 food and green waste.
So green waste would be like so lawn clippings and things like that? Okay. And, yeah, okay, no, that's right. Any other questions, Alex? I think you had you.
My question was just in response to what Erin had said. Is it likely, or have you heard anything around lately in the community that if we were to consult on organics collection, that there is community appetite to respond to collecting it and generating some new industry here in Southland?
It may be one that Fiona wants to speak to, because I do believe Fiona has been approached at different times.
So it's definitely, we within WasteNet have had the directive to explore community options, and it's something that we are expecting potentially to come out of the due diligence when we tender. I guess the only flag that we've had with the interactions we've had around community consultation or community initiatives for managing green waste at the moment is just the viability of those, particularly the volumes. But if that was something to emerge during the contract tendering, then it's definitely something we could consider.
And in that case, because the modelling has been done for us to go out on consultation with for organics at that high end of the bracket, worst case scenario of trucking it to Dunedin, if we were to have something locally emerge, it's likely that that price would reduce?
Correct, yes.
Thank you.
Just a question from me before I come to you, Barry, so, and I'll come to you too, Tom. So either Erin or Fiona, the legislative requirement for us to look at this, where are we at with that? Where is that moving to?
Happy for Fiona to speak to that one.
Yes, so there were targets set by the previous government. Those weren't moved forward and set as requirements. They've since been repealed by the current government. So at the moment it is up to each individual council to determine what they would like to do. One thing that the government has, however, signalled is that although it's not a legislative requirement, they've signalled that there will be ongoing increases of waste levy, so that is the main tool that they're using to drive behaviour.
Waste levy is linked to what?
Volumes going into landfills.
Any particular clarification, or it's just a volume, pure
Just
number?
a volume.
You could be putting anything in nuclear waste.
Yes, that's correct. There's different rates for different classes of landfills, so there's different kinds depending what it is, but they each have a dollar value associated with any type of material. It's all weight based.
Barry and then Tom.
Yeah, as far as the green waste, like if I take my trailer load of green waste to the landfill, dump it over the side, am I right in thinking that that's going to Dunedin?
Not at
Not?
no.
So do you want to
So what
explain
actually
what
happens to
currently
it?
happens to it and what would
Yeah.
the proposals or options be?
Yes. So there are various methodologies for managing green waste, digestion, composting. There's a whole host of different options. Within the modelling, what we've done is the transport and gate fee to send it up to Dunedin's processing facility. At the moment, the majority of transfer stations across the Southland region mulch and hold their green waste.
So it's just to be clear then, so under the one option, that wouldn't happen, it wouldn't be mulch, it would just be transferred as raw material to Dunedin?
Yes.
Right, okay.
So a concern I have, and it is a question, Chair, the point which Councillor Pottinger has made is a very important point, I think. We are working on the assumption that because government has a wish to remove green waste, that automatically should be the direction that we head in. We've got a unique situation here because of AB Lime. We've got a unique situation where there is actually probably increased societal value in continuing to do what we're doing now. So my question is the extent to which officers are weighing that issue, because I've never seen it appearing in any paper. The point that Councillor Pottinger made is absolutely right. It's never in any of these papers. We never talk about that. And it does seem to me to be an absolutely critical issue, because it may be that by removing it and sending it to Dunedin, we're actually doing more harm environmentally than by continuing to doing what we're doing now.
I'm happy to speak to that one, Fiona. At least to start with, you may wish to add. Essentially, the reason that we haven't brought that in is because it's really primarily being used as a commercial mechanism by AB Lime, and it comes down for them as to whether at different times of year it is more financially viable for them to simply flare off the gas, or whether or not it's more financially viable for them to use that to produce power on the site, to essentially power their operations on site. It's not something that is essentially being used for a purpose outside of the landfill operation.
Can I do a point of order there?
If you could just
Yeah,
I'll let
sorry.
you come back to you. Thanks.
Okay.
Really, the main focus that we've looked at and what we've spoken about before is really that financial driver around at what point, based on central government's approach and as to what it's saying it's going to do around increasing costs per tonne to landfill, regardless of what that item is, whether it's wood chips or whether or not it's nuclear waste. I should say nuclear waste is not going to the landfill. That you would still have that same levy, and at some point we expect that it is going to become an increasingly more expensive
AB Lime, so they sell that back to the grid, and then your flaring thing would be when that price of power drops, which, going forward, power price is probably going to go up, so there'll be less flaring and more back to the grid. But that, they generate that income, but it in a way, it offsets our gate price, because they can generate income so that the pit's more profitable, so therefore the gate price is not perhaps as high, or it's subsidised. Is that a reasonable assumption?
It may have an impact when it comes to renegotiating the contract, but at the moment the gate price has been set as part of the contract, obviously with inflation provisions.
Right, Rangi, do you want to?
Oh, look, just to get the facts right, look, the flaring stopped ages ago. They were using the methane to boil water. Sorry?
Oh, no, sorry. We've just lost our cameras, so I'm just trying to work out what's happened.
And then the electricity came up. So the flaring is long gone. It was being used instead of coal and stuff. And now it goes, as you said before, to the open market.
Yeah.
But obviously, if we want to benefit from that, we would need to, it's all on how we work out the contracts and stuff. But getting back to what Tom was raising, it's still an option that seems to be just missed, and there's about 7 A-grade landfills in New Zealand, and the minister, talking to him the other day, there are exemptions for those particular landfills you can claim that bypass the emission trading scheme tax and stuff. So I just
because they're using
because of this constructive into the grid thing, and I just wish there was more information provided to us to either put aside the myths and rumours that we're generating here, or there could be real facts, But I've talked to the people at AB Lime, and they're really positive about this. So it'd be nice to have a balanced view on this. Thanks.
So I'm very happy to ask if AB Lime would like to come and present again. The information that I've provided is based on us meeting with them about 2 weeks ago, but I'm very happy for us to organise a future session. Usually they would come and present to the WasteNet meeting, but if at any time any council would like a presentation from the contractors, that's always something we can arrange as well.
So look, thanks for the question. So I'm keen to sort of get into a bit of discussion and debate now, if there's any. And to sort of start that, I think from my perspective, a couple of things I see is that if we provide a fourth bin for green waste, we actually are going to increase our green volumes. way we're dealing with waste in terms of, you know, it's going out to AB Lime and it's being used effectively, as Rangi's highlighted, that, you know, it works well as it is. And so why would we sort of add an additional bin for green waste to increase that issue, particularly when there's no legislative requirement for us to do that? Now, then that may change, but currently there isn't. So I think that's something I'd like feedback from the committee. And it's probably assuming that the glass is removed. So you go with a 3-bin versus a current 2-bin status quo. So I'm interested in that discussion, and then how much, in terms of what do we consult on, really looking for guidance from the committee around, do we go with all options? And I think to Rangi's point, we would probably try to roll into the consultation any information we can glean from AB Lime around the efficiencies and what's happening at the plant and what their proposal would be going forward around that may offset cost, or it may just give confidence to the public that we're dealing with this in a really efficient way.
Sorry, Chair, can I just add just a little piece to that point, which is that there are definitely other landfills in the country where organics are causing them a real problem, and those are landfills where, to be honest, there's a reasonable amount of pressure on their respective councils to remove organics. Our situation is very different here, that in terms of the gas capture system that has been installed by AB Lime, and they've invested significantly into that, means that they are operating a landfill where they are not concerned by the volume of organics that are going there, and obviously for that matter they would, you know, they would prefer to see it continue. It obviously is something that they'd prefer, that investment going to them to be going elsewhere. So I think that's something to feed in as well to that point around case for change.
Right, before I take any questions, we've got to pause for 5 minutes because we've got live streams down. So you can resonate or marinate on your questions, and then we'll come back.
It was just a comment about the landfill.
Come back in 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I want to capture it.